listening to The Betmaker Show. This is the NFL post-draft AFC North team season betting odds preview for Monday, April 29th, 2019. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of The Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
Hey folks, time for another edition of the Betmaker.com Sportsbook Report. I'm Brian Blessing in Las Vegas. Here we're focused on the AFC North. Don't forget, check the website. We've got every division preview for you, and we've got you covered on both sides of the counter with two of the absolute best. And that's our friend Jack, the head odds maker for the NFL at bookmaker.eu, and Bruce Marshall, who'll be coming up a little bit later from the Gold Sheet here in Las Vegas. The AFC North, man alive, I think we got three teams that are going to be just beating each other up, hammer and tongue. Should be a fun year in the AFC North, and the Browns are the polarizing team. Everybody can't wait to see what they're going to do on the field. And I think it's going to be really interesting to get the take from Jack at bookmaker.eu. Hello, Jack. How's it going today, sir?
Good, Brian. Couldn't be better.
Give us the overview in terms of odds to win the AFC North, and maybe the quick question on the way in. Cleveland on paper seems like they've gone and built an all-star team, and how is that translated to them and the other teams in the division?
Well, it's translated that Cleveland's become the favorite to win that division. And
you ever think you'd say that?
Yeah, no. I mean, that's a team a couple of years ago you're saying, well, they win a game. And now they're plus 142 to win the AFC North, followed closely by Pittsburgh at plus 185. Baltimore plus 260, and Cincinnati lagging behind at plus 2350.
Well, let's start with the Browns. And the one thing, a season win total of 9 over $1.19. I remember when Daniel Snyder, way back at the beginning when he first got the team, he went out and he basically bought himself an all-star team. And they were a dog's breakfast. They couldn't get out of their way. On paper, you're looking at star after star, up and down, in and out of the lineup, and it was a mess. So it can look great on paper, but that doesn't always translate to the field. But all signs are pointing Baker Mayfield, Odell Beckham, what they already had on defense. It certainly makes sense that this is a team on the rise.
This team is certainly on the rise. If you take the way they finished last season, where they won I think they were 6-1 down the stretch, something like that. I may be off a game. Prior to all their additions, if you had said at the end of last year, what's going to be the record? 8-8 would not have been a stretch. Now you take all those additions, that's going to equal more than the one game. They're 9 over something, and I don't see any money coming for the under.
You know, the one thing I would bring up here, and we'll have more on this with Bruce Marshall a little bit, but I'd be curious from the odds maker's perspective, be it a college team or be it an NFL team. I've always maintained I don't think enough stock is put in the coach in relation to the number. And sometimes a coach is just so good that maybe he should be worth something. But I take it a step further. I think coordinators are massively important. And I think the departure, as good as it looks for Cleveland, but I think the departure of Greg Williams as the defensive coordinator, I think there could be a real transition period there. And, it could translate into wins early in the season. But I would think it would clearly make me focus on Cleveland games going over the total early on. I just think Greg Williams, maybe a bust as a head coach, but a spectacular defensive coordinator.
He certainly wasn't a bust at the end of last year, and I was shocked that he didn't get the job. When they finished out the season as they did, I thought he was a shoo-in to get it. Okay, so I was proved wrong. You make a good point with his defensive prowess. He was the good one with the Saints before they went through all the rest that failed up till last year. And it could be a factor. Cleveland over is not a bad play. Mayfield loves to. They're going to throw the ball a lot. They're going to score a lot of points. The defense suffers a little. The games go over. I think you got a case there.
Baltimore wins the division last year, and we're looking at 8.5 under $1.26. So this is kind of a combo card why that number maybe like they won 10 last year and they're 8.5 under here. And that's the Browns are better, A. But B, you're going to be dealing with Lamar Jackson from day one, which you could say could turn out to be a good thing, that he's in there for the long haul. They get Marquise Brown, the rocket sled wide receiver, but what we saw last year with Jackson was that he couldn't stretch the field. It was either he'd tuck it and run, or it was just underneath passes and out passes. So I think for the players and the odds makers alike, we got a real learning curve here with the Ravens in the early third of the season.
We do. And again, looking at inside the division, when they play Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Cincinnati twice, I really don't give them more than 3 wins right there. Now they got to go outside and win another 5.5. That's a press. So I think 8.5 under is a solid number. I think they are down, and I'm not sure about Jackson yet. I hope he becomes a great quarterback, but I'm not sure he's the answer for them right now.
And then Pittsburgh 9.5 over $1.48. Obviously, Antonio Brown is not there. They get a wide receiver in the third round of the draft from Toledo, Deontay Johnson. They hope that he can come in and help them out. Juju Smith-Schuster is going to have to be the go-to guy. They went on the defensive side of the ball, traded up to get a linebacker, Devin Bush, to replace. They really, after the real bad injury to the linebacker Razier, they hope that their defense can be pretty solid. But you still have Roethlisberger. I'm just curious, though, from a skill position player perspective. I think Tyreek Hill, we'll talk about that when we get to the AFC West. How about Antonio Brown? Was he a skill position player that if he was going to be out of the game, that he'd have an impact on a number?
Yes, for the same reason as we spoke about Julio Jones at one point. He forces the double coverage or he beats the one-on-one. Your choice what you want to do defensively. And Antonio Brown was that guy. He may have been a headache on the sidelines, but on the field he was a plus. I think he'll be a plus in Oakland. And I don't see Pittsburgh. They've made their losses will offset their great additions that you alluded to. So I don't see Pittsburgh going over the 9. I think it's Tomlinson will be gone eventually.
Right. Now, I don't know that we could make this leap of faith. And maybe it's more a simple math question, but if an Antonio Brown was worth a point or a 1.5 a game, if you take his departure out over 16 games, is that a difference of a win when you're hanging a season win total?
Yes, it is. Yeah, you have to factor that in. Now, naturally, everybody's contribution, whether it be a coach, an offensive lineman, it all goes down to what your record is and how many points you score, how many points you allow. So it's always a factor there. Then that's why when you say Antonio Brown, a 1.5, that's really a lot for a wide receiver, as you've mentioned many times. When you get to running backs, that's a different story. A point is hard pressed for to make a running back worth more than that. It's the quarterback and the overall contribution of the team, the office, the general managers, the coaches. But Pittsburgh has lost as much as they gained, and Pittsburgh under is the right play, I believe.
And then we go to Cincinnati. Jack, I'm looking at 6 over $1.20 at bookmaker.eu. Clearly a team in transition, but it's going to be Dalton again. We know that.
And will Dalton get hurt again? He's got hurt the last 2 years, I believe. Cincinnati, their coach Marvin Lewis is finally gone. I think he had them in play for a lot of years there. I think he got a little bad rap for not winning a playoff game, but they had to get rid of him. I mean, the team's future, as indicated by 6 wins. I can make no case for Cincinnati going over, especially in a tough division where I think they may go 2-4 into the division. So Cincinnati under 6, and Cincinnati is a dead team are my predictions.
Yeah, it's funny. I look at that number, and I think you're spot on. You kind of took the words right out of my mouth. That number sitting on 6, I don't see that attracting any attention from the bettors. I could be completely wrong, but are there those teams? They would strike. If so, they would strike me as being one that number's sitting there, and people are looking at it going, I want no part of that.
I think that's the way it's going to play out, and we'll find that out in the next few weeks.
All right. Outstanding work again, Jack. As always appreciate your time, sir.
My pleasure.
There's your look at the AFC North from the odds makers side of the equation. We'll turn to the handicapping side next with our friend Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet. Reminding you can follow us on social media. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. Want you to subscribe on your favorite podcast service, iTunes, Libsyn, SoundCloud, and others. And you can find all the episodes on our website and sign up for our newsletter at betmaker.com. Don't go anywhere. Coming right back with Bruce Marshall. For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. Let's focus on the AFC North. Soldiering on here, betmaker.com Sportsbook Report. Thanks to our good friend, Jack the Head Odds Maker at bookmaker.eu. And now we turn to Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet here in Las Vegas. Interesting division, Bruce. Did you ever think, and I fancy you a historian, that we'd ever say the Cleveland Browns would be the favorite to win the division in your lifetime?
Well, not since Bernie Kosar was there, Brian. I mean, and that was the previous Browns. So, no, this is something that's going on with the Browns here now, and I can sort of see why they're, the pick going into the season. Although my gut feel is this entire division is sort of overrated, and none of this is going to be. This division might see a significant drop, even though the Browns look like a team on the rise. I do have one question though about the Browns. They are entrusting an awful lot in their new head coach, Freddie Kitchens. And I know he was there, and I know he was offensive coordinator last year, and he got Mayfield to respond to them, but he's never been a head coach before. And this looks like a pretty complicated locker room at the least. When you add, an acknowledged diva like Odell Beckham Jr. in there, as good as he is, you've got some pretty big personalities in there to deal with. And I'm just wondering if Cleveland would have been better off going with a more established coach who sort of has some experience in dealing with all this stuff. I understand. I kind of thought they would keep Kitchens as the offensive coordinator as part of a prerequisite for a new coach coming in. Instead, they've made him the head coach. I think that's a questionable move, and I'm not convinced that's the right move the Browns made, and we'll see. I know the hype is there for the Browns, but I'm pumping the brakes just a little bit on all this Cleveland hype right now.
What's your sense of belief here that Greg Williams was just too much of a taskmaster?
Perhaps. I don't know that they ever viewed him as a long-term answer there. Taskmaster, volatility, and all. And this reminds me of some situations we've seen in the past. I think Kitchens was extremely popular. And I've heard that and believe that, and I'm sure he was. And in his position as an offensive coordinator, he wasn't quite the top banana there. He didn't. It's a different role now. He's got to manage this entire operation and not just focus on calling the plays for the offense. And it's a different role there for him. And I don't know that Williams was going to be the answer long term. I'm not sure Kitchens is either. I just think this is maybe an unnecessary gamble that the Browns are taking here, because the roster certainly looks like it's ready to deliver. I just not sure they've got the right coach. We'll see.
Bottom line is, on paper, it's beautiful, right? But making it mesh is another story.
Yeah, I think that's the whole thing here. And certainly they've got reason to be excited there. I mean, they played extremely well down the stretch last year. They were playing like a playoff team in December last year. Some of the wins they had, they really should have beaten Baltimore that last game. They went into Denver and won. Mayfield arrived. All of the pieces on offense around him, Chubb. Now you add OBJ, the guys on defense, Myles Garrett, and all the others that they've added the last couple of years. I mean, it looks like it's ready to just to burst upon the scene. And we sort of saw a hint of that last December. So I do sort of understand the hype there for the Browns. But again, I'm expressing a bit of caution before we head into the season.
Pittsburgh, 9.5 over $1.48. They believe they hit a home run and invested a lot to go up and get Devin Bush, the linebacker from Michigan, and they think he can be a game changer for them on the defensive side of the ball. But to me, it's more about what's going on between the ears with this team, Bruce. I think legitimately Mike Tomlin's achieved a lot of good things there, but I think there's pressure on him But I do believe this is a team that's going to play with a chip on their shoulder with Antonio Brown out of there. So it's kind of a mindset thing for me with Pittsburgh, how they react this year.
Yeah, it is. And, I think, it's a little more settled this year than it was a year ago. Let's face it, even though James Conner stepped in pretty well there, Le'Veon Bell's absence and the fact, is he coming back, isn't he coming back, the holdout, and then that extended through the entire season, that was a year-long distraction there. And apparently Antonio Brown was a little bit more of a distraction internally than people thought at the time. A real diva. By the end of the season, that had completely worn thin, and, they didn't even suit him up for the last game. So they've rid themselves of those distractions this year. Now, Brown's role there, and he certainly helped Roethlisberger a lot, but Big Ben has been Big Ben for a long time. And for a couple of years now, there's no talk about him retiring. He signed an extension, so he's going to be there for the next couple of years. And I think that will help. Devin Bush's addition, I think that fills that role. Let's also not forget Ryan Shazier's serious injury that he had at the end of 2017. I don't think they ever adequately replaced him. At the linebacking spot, Bush might give them that. They thought enough of Bush's availability to trade up 10 spots and give up picks down the draft and next year in the third round to Denver just to move to take Bush. So I actually think Pittsburgh would be my pick to win this division going in ahead of Cleveland right now, because I think things are a bit more settled and they still got Big Ben in the fold. And I think he's always going to be the key there as long as he plays in Pittsburgh.
Very quickly, though, to wrap up Pittsburgh, the one thing, distractions, Bell, the Brown nonsense at the end of the year. Ben Roethlisberger threw two of the most egregious interceptions that cost them the playoffs last year. I mean, those were throws a rookie quarterback wouldn't make.
You're right. I mean, they lost some games. I mean, there was no excuse losing to Denver and Oakland down the stretch last year. And those are some games where Big Ben really made some errors, especially that Denver game. It's one they never should have lost. So you usually didn't see Pittsburgh blowing games like that. I'm going to give them a little bit of a mulligan, though, because that was the first playoff miss since 2012, and all those distractions they had last year. And my gut feel is if the other part of this, Cleveland's on the way up, we'll talk about the other teams in a minute, but they might be slipping a bit, and there might be an opportunity for the Steelers to grab an extra win or two this year.
Baltimore, 8.5 under $1.26. I find the selections really intriguing, Bruce. They get Marquise Brown, the home run hitter, wide receiver. Then they get the big target, Miles Boykin from Notre Dame. So they went out and got Lamar Jackson a lot of toys to throw the football to. The only question is, does Jackson develop to the point where he can get the ball downfield? Because at the beginning of the year, John Brown was really good with Flacco, but then he went invisible when Jackson took over at quarterback because he could not see down the field.
Yeah, and frankly, there was a little hit and miss, and I know they threw Jackson into the deep end of the water there, and they went with him down the stretch. Some belated decent numbers in the playoff game in the division round and the wild card round against the Chargers. But I mean, he was pretty miserable for most of that game, and the Chargers were playing it kind of loose when his numbers improved late in the game. I think this is a dangerous experiment they're making with Jackson at quarterback, and it could unravel the whole thing there. They did pick up Mark Ingram from the Saints, who should help the running game, although they didn't run too badly with Collins last year. But Ingram figures to be a slight upgrade there. So a lot of this, they've gotten some more weapons for Jackson. I think Hollywood Brown was a little overrated to go that quickly, if you ask me. But more concern here is this defense going to erode a little bit. There are some pretty long-term pieces that they had to let go here in the offseason with Terrell Suggs and Mosley and Zadarius Smith and Weddle. They did add Earl Thomas from the Seahawks, though he might be on the downside of his career at a safety spot too. And Ozzie Newsome is now not calling the shots personnel-wise. They promoted Eric DeCosta after Ozzie retired, or actually kind of slid into an advisory role there. So I'm not as sure about the Ravens. So John Harbaugh was thinking about leaving. From what we heard at times last year, they re-signed him. But I still think this is a team in transition, and I'm not sure Jackson's the answer. We'll see.
And then we go to Cincinnati. It's over $1.20. Bruce, do we give them the benefit of the doubt simply because Marvin Lewis isn't there anymore?
That's one school of thought, although my feeling is Lewis did about as much as he could with the situation in Cincinnati. I mean, he did get him to the playoffs 7 times in 16 years. They didn't win a playoff game, but I thought he sort of gave them a chance every year. You're working with a penurious organization. I think it's interesting to know they are the northernmost NFL franchise without an indoor practice facility. And you and I both know that around Cincinnati, it gets pretty raw weather-wise when you get into November and beyond, and they have to go up to the University of Cincinnati to use their indoor practice facility when the weather gets bad. So, and the fact they didn't have much of a backup behind Andy Dalton at quarterback last year suggests they always tend to go kind of cheap. Zach Taylor's a 35-year-old rookie head coach. They're trying to catch the Sean McVay lightning in a bottle, hiring him off the Rams staff. Big question mark there. I am hardly convinced he's an upgrade from Marvin Lewis. So I am not very bullish on the Bengals right now. And I think, and also with Dalton, maybe on his last legs at quarterback, although he seems to give them the best shot to compete, but he's not an answer for them to improve much. So I think they're kind of in a box there in Cincinnati, at least for another year.
Put a lid on it, bud. Is there a changing of the guard? Can Cleveland kick the door down?
They could, but I'm thinking, maybe not. I mean, the Ravens actually, were the team to emerge out of this division last year, and I think Pittsburgh, with a little more settled situation and not all those distractions, is more likely to reemerge on top of this division. And let's see what Freddie Kitchens does. I'm a little skeptical of that hire in Cleveland. I might be the only one, but I am.
There you have it. It's our preview of the AFC North. As always, great thanks to Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet and Jack, the head odds maker for bookmaker.eu on the NFL. Hoping you're enjoying our division previews and the podcast. Want you to subscribe at iTunes, Libsyn, SoundCloud, and more. Of course, you can find all of our episodes on our website and sign up for our newsletter at betmaker.com. I'm Brian Blessing in Las Vegas. We appreciate you joining us right here at betmaker.com.
Let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com, and reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling. An approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment.
If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.